Hi everyone, it's Roger here from What's on disneyplus.com, and in this special episode of the What's on Disney Plus podcast, I've got some people with me, and so I'm going to pass this one over to Josh because we're going to be talking all about Disenchanted, musicals, a whole host of stuff. So I'm going to pass this one over to Josh, and he's going to be leading us through this one, and yeah, this one's going to be very interesting.
Thanks, Roger. It's a thrill to get to be back on What's on Disney Plus. Musicals are such a big genre for Disney Plus. Disney's known for their animated musicals. They're known for their live action musicals, Mary Poppins, and so many others. Of course, I think the biggest Disney Plus original, perhaps thus far, has been Hamilton a couple of years back. And so now, though, you have Disenchanted coming onto the service, the sequel to the much beloved Amy Adams. It was really the first kind of big discovery of her as a talent. And, she's gone on to very much bigger and better things, you might say. But there's always such a love for this original Enchanted musical. And now Disenchanted, the sequel, is out on Disney Plus. All of us have seen it. This is an interesting crew of folks who are from all over and have some different perspectives. And so I'm excited to kind of bring people together and explore this a little bit. I think that maybe there's been a little bit of unfair criticism when I look at the Rotten Tomatoes score initially here after a few days of it being out. But at any rate, we're gonna jump into that, and I'll introduce first Erika Hicks has had some history with the Island Theater in Fleming Island, Florida, near Jacksonville. She was just saying that she's been in 14 shows with that theater troupe. And has been a board member there, a director there, has done a lot of theater. So we've known each other online, and I knew that she's a theater expert. And then just briefly as well, Gabriel Greaves, you've had him on before. He is, of course, a graduate of Kennesaw State University. And Gabriel, I hope I've got that right. African-American and Indigenous history is kind of some of your expertise and, understanding. And also just a huge Disney Renaissance fan as well. So you have that same, I think, love that all of us do for this genre. So, Erika, love to hear about your general impression of the film Disenchanted. Just a quick synopsis before we, I suppose, dive a little bit deeper.
Well, great. Thanks for having me on. Initially going into it, I like to go in with the, hope for or what is the saying there? Like, hope for the best, expect the worst. And as a lot of times with Disney sequels, we don't always, get the best. They're having some exceptions, Mary Poppins Returns and, they're Frozen 2, I thought was better than the original. Going into it, I even wrote my expectations down. I expected the music to be about like a 7.5, 8 out of 10, and the story about the same. At the end of it, I think both had 9s out of 10s. I think the music could have been a little bit better just because I don't know that's the music I thought in the original was just like every single song knocked it out of the park, I thought, with the original, and I expected that a little bit more with this one, but I still thought it was wonderful. And I mean, how can you go wrong with Amy Adams and Idina Menzel? I mean, you have the queen of Broadway right there with Idina Menzel, so I don't think you can go wrong with that. So, but I was pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely, I'm with you there. I think that it did. I like surpass expectations. I mean, we all know sequels aren't going to always be that timeless, level of just lightning in a bottle. I think you feel like with Enchanted. I mean, the elements that came together with that first musical, and even the plot of this fish out of water in New York City, and the hustle and bustle of that, and it's a very different environment that we got with this film. So it maybe isn't going to live up to quite that level, but they have to take it into a second chapter and do something different. And I think they did succeed in many ways. That we'll probably get into some criticisms as well. But I think that people who have some idealized version of what they wanted here. I mean, you don't want a repeat of the second. I don't know that you can get that. So, or rather the first. Gabriel, general impressions of the film. And you're on.
Well, for me, personally, y'all can hear me, right? You can hear me just fine?
Yeah.
Cool.
We can.
So for me, personally, I thought the film had a lot of awesome points. I've always been a fan of Disney musicals that are memorable. And I say the word memorable because the best musicals are the ones that are just simple and not trying too hard. So I thought that, for the first Enchanted movie, I loved the simplicity of it. I loved the way that it had the courage in 2007 to make fun of the genre of musicals that Disney was coming out with, and they were tongue in cheek. In Disenchanted, I liked about several of the songs, but personally, I didn't really care too much for the movie as a whole. It doesn't mean I think I don't. It doesn't mean that I think it should deserves negative reviews. What I mean is that um, in the first Enchanted film, you had about a total of 4 songs. If I go by memory alone, you had songs such as you know, um, "Still Dreaming of a True Love's Kiss," and then you had the refrain where they repeated it. Then you had the song she sung in the apartment, a happy working song. Then you had the song she sung in the streets that was amazing. How does she know that you love her? And then the ending song, about so close. And then like one little quick little a repeat of I'm still dreaming of a true love's kiss in a modern sense. It's about 5 songs total. What I did not like about Disenchanted was that it was overkill with the songs. Like literally every 2 minutes there was a song. And for me, when you have too much going on, it doesn't help you to remember it. There was about 1 or 2 good songs I liked in Disenchanted. My favorite one was Batter, where she Giselle and the queen of the the lady who was extremely bougie. Um, they went back and forth. I love the energy. It was very, very engaging, and I just love, when Amy Adams just goes to work, showing her brilliance. But some of the other songs in the movie just felt unmemorable. It really felt, ironically, like a Disney sequel. Um, just having some songs, it was like there was no reason for them to go to the villagers singing a song. We don't need to know them. We're talking about the stepdaughter right now. Let's just go and talk about the story and give more energy on that than just having singing for his own sake. But I enjoyed the movie nonetheless.
I'd love to hear Erika reply to that a little bit, because you have a high impression of the music. I know. I thought that I'll just add to agree with Gabriel on one point, which is I think the first song particularly, which is Andalasia, and it's a kind of, I think, a 4.5 minute number that you have with the squirrel, which is, by the way, I think a kind of a risky number to have an animated squirrel in a mainstream film like be your first number. But I mean, I think it sort of worked. I mean, it's obviously kind of keeping with. There was obviously so many references as well to Disney that they threw in there, and Easter eggs in that bit. Then they go to Amy Adams' song, which is I don't think was, for myself, Stephen Schwartz's strongest work. Like there was like this stuff about riding a bike and flying a kite, and now we're suburbanites. And I just like, that's not, it wasn't great lyrically, for these Alan Menken and Stephen Schwartz, who are, I think, give us some really good stuff in here. But a couple of them I think were weaker. So Erika, your thoughts on pluses, minuses here on the music?
Well, I agree with Gabriel. The best song was Batter. I mean, I even had that written down. Like everything. Like I don't know if you would call it cinematography, but I mean, I guess technically. I mean, just the ending shot where you had both of them and you see them both sit down in their thrones. Like everything about that was absolutely incredible. The choreography, just with it both being, they were both villains in that song, and that doesn't really happen, in most shows or movies. When I say show, I mean like stage show. That's what I naturally am thinking. But you don't generally get a 2 villain song, and you don't generally see a competition. So that was just, the concept of it was amazing. And then seeing like Maya Rudolph, it's funny because I just had watched Bridesmaids earlier that day, and I hadn't even thought of it, like, oh yeah, like I'm just hearing this. um that was my favorite song. Like when I got to the end of it, I like looked around, and my son was like, I knew you'd like that song. Like he knows me. But I think, like I said, I wished that, and I'm looking at the list now. I think Love Power. I wished that one, not the reprise, but the one that Dean is saying. I wish it had been a little more. I wish more of all of the songs had been a little more Disney cheesy-ish, and I think they were more poppy, modern-ish, and I wish they had been a little more like the princess movie, like that, like how in the original Enchanted we had, like you said, Happy Working Song, and they were all a little like, yes, we know this is completely cheesy and absolutely absurd that we are singing to roaches and to mice that are helping us clean this house, but we love it anyways. Um, but as much as I liked the music, it definitely felt below par for Steven Schwartz and Alan Menken. I mean, one of my favorite shows is Wicked, and for Steven Schwartz to it, I'm like, he was involved in this. Like, it was a little bit lesser quality than what I would have expected, but maybe they ran out of time. I don't know. This is it doesn't have to hit. Maybe I just need to hear it more too. I mean,
Sure.
it could be that. It just might need to grow on me a little more, and that happens too. So,
Roger, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I pretty much actually agree with Gabriel on most of it. I went in I didn't really have high expectations for the film at all, because I like the first one, and and I've seen it a few times, but the music come from that movie I associate more with the parks. Like Ever After is kind of more like Carrie Underwood and at the theme parks with the castle all lit up. So I kind of associate it more with that. I watched the movie. I enjoyed it. It was fine. I didn't really got anything, like you say, like nothing negative to say. It just didn't blow me away. Badder is like the only song I could remember after the end of it. It all just kind of blended in with each other and a bit like generic. And yeah, I like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, but it didn't blow me away. So it was, like a 7 out of 10 kind of like, it's good, but just wasn't amazing.
I will stand up for it just a little bit to say I think there are maybe at least 2 or 3 other standout songs in it, which is to say the one I think with Edward and Nancy together, where they're back, so James Marsden and Idina Menzel back as kind of the king and queen from Andalasia, where they're kind of introducing the wand bit. That was just, I mean, every bit, honestly, that James Marsden, who is King Edward in this, and he's still, of course, that sort of fish out of water character. He's this very comedic, kind of over the top, Robert, that we see in the trailer, etc. He's he's just so over the top. So whenever he's on screen, I think it's very funny. And I think their bit together, it was fun to see him and Idina Menzel get to kind of do the whole magic wand kind of bit together. And, even Morgan, there is some story stuff going on too, because the daughter Morgan, of course, is kind of asking and realizing, oh, I'm not a, true daughter of Andalasia. And you're getting into these themes about kind of blended families and, stepmother kind of stuff that I think does play out as you get further along in the story. But that was a fun bit. And I will say too, the actress who plays Morgan, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Erika, but the song she has, Perfect, where she's kind of going around town very much like Belle, and even playing out some little bits. If you've seen any of the videos out there of hidden Disney references in this film, there's some very funny stuff that we didn't even catch until we saw some of the YouTube videos out there. But her song, I think, is very well done. I think there's a lot to it, and I don't even know what stage background she has, but to me, like, wow, she really, gave a lot to this part. She talks in interviews about having grown up, having seen the original Enchanted, and it was such a huge part of her childhood, and now to get to be part of the sequel was a big deal to her. Of course, it's not the original actress from the original film reprising her role, and they're doing some interesting stuff there, where. She was the wide-eyed little kid in the first one, and now she is the, kind of teenager who's trying to make her own way in the world and have her own life. And there's some great themes there. I think they're really rich. The other thing I would point out, is Amy Adams' song, which is Fairy Tale Life, where she kind of makes the wish. And there is some great story stuff going on, I think, in that particular song. And so I think there are a few that are really stand out, but and with Batter, of course, I think being the best of them, which, by the way, if you've seen, which I hope you have, The Muppets 2011 with Amy Adams, there's a bit, her Me Party song, it kind of reminds me of Batter, where she's kind of playing to camera, and, it's just a very Amy Adams bit. So, but Gabriel, I know you wanted to jump in earlier there.
Yeah, I think for me, what you go into a movie looking for makes the biggest difference, because, if you, this isn't to critique anything for people who really enjoy the movie, it's just to make a point that if you're a true fan of Disney musicals, there's no requirement that everything be liked. I only say that because I found myself wrestling at times when I was watching the movie. I remember thinking, I'm going to watch it because I love Amy Adams. I love the first one. I love seeing, what's the name of the actor one more time who plays Prince Edward, King Edwards? What's his name?
James Marsden.
Thank you, James Marsden. James Marsden did show theater, before he became a Hollywood star. So, he throws himself into his roles 100%. I loved, seeing him just over the top, exuberant, and just seeing his true love come through when it comes to the roles he does. I think for me personally, like, the message, some movies and the musicals aren't really sticking out to you as much. The message is what takes precedence. So when people critique the movie, I tend to ask, well, what message are you looking for it to say? Enchanted spoke about how, certain themes that you grew up with, they're magical and over the top, aren't thrown out because you live in a realistic world. This movie talked about how things will go further with understanding the dynamics of a stepchild versus being someone's child and what that actually feels like. I can say, as someone who was a stepchild, who is a stepchild, grew up in a blended family, that I felt what was going on with Giselle and her daughter, how even Giselle had to apologize to Morgan because she realized that she was treating her biological child as more significant as her daughter without ever telling her daughter, you really are my child. I thought that stuff was really powerful. So for me, the musicals not being as crisp as I thought, or being as engaging for me throughout, didn't phase me from liking the movie. But I wouldn't say personally the musicals, have to be defended or that it was all good. Again, for me, I felt Batter was it. Like, but she doing all that, I like, that stuff was brilliant to me. I loved it. When they were just going in and showing, their intense sides. And I like the Love Power song too. I think at one point I felt, to be honest, I thought, you're hitting these notes, but it's a little bit drawn out. Like, we get it, love power, we get it. She kept repeating the same, love power. I was like, we get it, you did that.
Yeah, I think if we ever
get this, just get the magical memory, get the memories, and move out.
Yeah, if Disney ever wanted to do a live action Frozen, they've already got a trailer in that song, basically. No
and
question of that.
Throwing it out, and I think that's what I've noticed. Like, if you like something and want to be continually good, what they could have done to improve the movie, have more dialogue, and don't draw out the songs to try to force magic. That doesn't mean there's not a magical film. But it's never going to be the exact same as the first one. That's what gave me some grace for it too. I wasn't looking for Enchanted Part 2. There's no way you can match Enchanted. Even the actors themselves have aged, so there's no way they look the same. Is it Patrick Dempsey? Dempsey, that's his name?
That's right.
Even I could tell, woof, all right, this is not 2007, and we all gotten older, so this is 2022. I am not expecting a repeat of what happened before, and I'm good with that.
It's kind of funny because you say that because at the D23 Expo, Patrick was completely white. And and then he's in the movie and he's like got like jet black hair. And you go, well, someone's been in the tie. And it's just like you didn't look like that a few weeks ago.
They call it stabilizing, Roger. It's stabilizing your hair. Erica, you're
no idea.
Erika, you're the musical theater person here. It is interesting to me that we moved from like a movie, as Gabriel's pointed out, with like 4 or 5 songs to 10 in this film. Would you want to defend the genre, or how this became a actual true musical versus Enchanted was a little lesser of that?
The only thing I can think is that Idina Menzel was now a much more. I mean, she was still an important. Well, I mean, she was an important character. They're all important characters, but I think she was more of a presence in this one because before she was, Nancy was just that's who he's dating, and I don't want to say she was a bad guy in the first one, but she was not as well liked, you know, like you had the abrasiveness because you could tell that she was trying to get along with Morgan, and you know, there was definitely a little bit of friction there, but she was not, she was definitely just a side character. And this one, because she's now is she queen or princess?
Queen,
But
yeah.
Nancy, yeah. So she has a much bigger role, and I'm like, wow, we have Adina Menzel, so let's give her. I mean, that's why I was not. If I had a voice like Adina Menzel, I'd be singing everything. So it wasn't surprising that that song was. She really drew that out. It didn't really surprise. I was like, it's Adina. She can sing anything, you know. And I'm like, she could sing her grocery list, and I'd be like, okay, you know. So, um, but it is surprising to think back and be like, wow, this one did have more songs because, um, like I said, I remember watching the first one and being completely blown away from the very beginning, and this one, I was like, well, I liked Batter, you know, and I remember that, you know, but it's funny you mentioned James Marsden. He's just his character's so just great. Everyone else, like, you know, Giselle has adjusted to being, you know, in the real world, but he's that storybook character, so he's so blatantly over the top, and I love it. I'm here for it, you know. But it is funny because, like, now that you mentioned, I'm like looking back, I'm like, wow, that is more songs. Like I said, I think some of it I just need to listen to it more, um, but I did like, you know, Morgan's song. I thought that was, and I didn't know. I thought that was the original one. It wasn't until I looked it back up on IMDb because she looks so much like the original Morgan, and I was like, that's not her, you know. So that surprised me. She did a really good job. I mean, they did a good job of matching her up because she looked just like her.
They
So
did. Well, you bring up an interesting point about James Marsden kind of being sidelined a little bit, and honestly, even Patrick Dempsey. You know, I mean, his character, who were such a big part of the first film. But I can I can almost argue both sides of this because you do. I think, you know, for instance, in Once Upon a Time, the show, you know, the series that we're familiar with, I think most of us. I think as the series went on, especially, you kind of saw male characters being sidelined a lot in that show, and it was almost like they, you know, the female ones were always the one with the action and with the main scenes, etc., and the main drama. Um, and this one, like I think, especially when Edward, like, towards the end, was like, "Oh, I'm going to stay in the animated kingdom, and I'm not going to be part of it," you know, the finale at the end. It's like, okay, well, you know, we had Adina Menzel, we had Amy Adams, and we had our daughter, and you know, it was kind of all the female characters sort of taking the lead there. At the same time, like, the characters of Edward and Robert were such a huge part of the first one. Maybe they felt like they had to do something different, and you know, that could have been an element of just story wise, like, okay, we've played out Edward being over the top in, you know, so many scenes. You know, Robert and Amy's, or, you know, rather Robert and Giselle's, you know, kind of love story together. You know, I think I wish they would have done more with that. I think there's more to say about, you know, marriage and kind of the continual aspect of learning from each other and listening and, you know, becoming a couple and these kind of things. I think they could have done more there. But, you know, at any rate, either one of y'all thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, to be honest, I actually, until you actually started mentioning it, I didn't actually really even notice. That was the key thing, because they're just there, but they're not important. There's not really their story. It's not really. It's, you know, it's more about, you know, the stepmother and you know, Gazelle, and Robert's story was not important. It didn't matter. He was, and that was how I didn't look at it. I would have liked him to have actually done the battle with the dragon and the troll when we'd have seen it, but other than that, I don't really think it was needed. And it was the same thing kind of with the prince. I mean, he came in, was all nice and stuff, but it was kind of playing up on the fact that they're just princes and they fight things. And I didn't think it was a necessary part of the story that needed expanding much beyond what it was.
Thoughts, Gabriel, Erika? That's good.
I gotta agree.
Gabriel, you brought up the contemporary issue of kind of blended families a little bit. Erika, you're a mom of some children, if I'm not mistaken. And you obviously have the mother-daughter dynamic here as a really key part of the story. Wonder what you thought in terms of if it felt realistic, if it, was true to life, if there were some good insights in that core relationship that you see between kind of Morgan and Giselle.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I was married before too, and was a stepmother in that situation too. So, um, I, I think I thought it was beautiful. I mean, it was funny because all four of us, our son and daughter watched it with us too. And when Prince Edward and Nancy come in the first time, and they are bringing the scroll and the wand, and they say it's for the true daughter, a true daughter of Andalusia, and then I realized, I was like, wait, that's they're talking about the baby. I was like, that's all of us were like, that's not nice, like instinctively, all of us were like, wow, that's not cool, and like felt that burn for Morgan. Um, I mean, one of the first things I even took a note on was that before that, Morgan even calls her mom, which I thought was beautiful, because she obviously, I mean, in the first movie, I know she says a couple times in the thing, like, well, she could be my mom, or I want a mom, or something like that. So it's not surprising that even that as a teenager now she's calling her mom, because they got close. But I thought it was just it was so beautiful. And so even for the final moment, which I know we haven't gotten to it yet, but the whole like crux of the thing was just so beautiful, with her saying, no, you are a true daughter. I mean, I'm a crier anyways. I mean, that's just how it is. But I mean, I had tears streaming down my face. I thought that was so beautiful. Um, I I definitely, I mean, as far as ornery teenagers go, I mean, I know they definitely made a lot of correlations between it being, it being like Cinderella, and, the evil stepmother and the stepsisters and everything. There was a lot of, when I looked at the references, because my family and I caught a lot of them. But even when I went back to look up, like I looked in an article, and there were so many that I missed. But, um, I mean, with it being like almost like a mirroring of like Cinderella. Obviously, the daughter, Morgan is not, she's not bad for even for being an ornery teenager kind of thing. Um, she's a really good kid. So they had to make her, Amy Adams. They had to make her be absolutely atrocious for it to be there to be that massive contrast between the two of them. Um, but I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I mean, I thought the love between the mother and the daughter there, and truly just between Morgan, being Morgan, when I say the daughter, I thought I thought it was a beautiful. I like that Disney has done way more movies that are not just about true love between a man and a woman, and like how Frozen was between the love between the sisters, and then this is about like different, like it's about the step thing, but it's about how that love does stuff, and that true love there is what heals and everything. And I loved that. I thought it was absolutely beautiful.
It's beautiful. Gabriel, I can tell you're thinking about some things here. Oh, your thoughts on these themes?
No, I just in agreement with what she was saying just now. I think that the movie was wise to try to tackle some of those dynamics in regards to very real and very felt realities for blended families. And of course, the emphasis in this movie was on those who were stepdaughters and stepmothers. But I think it's a time message for anyone in a blended family. I would dare say, of course, adding on to that, I would dare say, um, in all vulnerability, if I can be real, if you came from a negative family experience regarding a blended family, then this movie could both speak to you and bring up some very real pains and traumas. I've said that before in other spaces when it comes to reality, that film is not just, taking in special effects and lighting. There are messages that are said and they hit people differently. And what I would like to say is that while I'm glad that Morgan and Giselle made up at the end, and Giselle confessed, Morgan, you are a true daughter of Andalasia. I appreciated that. What I didn't appreciate, in all frankness, is the mindset that the stepmother trope means that you are by nature cruel. And I will say straight up, I've seen women that have said, honestly, my stepmother was my fairy godmother. It was not my biological mom who came through and saved the day. She was more cruel than the traditional stepmother that is talked about in Disney. So I think it'd be nice at some point to have some conversations about what it felt like for others that felt maybe the stepmoms were not. I know Giselle's stepmom, of course, regardless. She's also Morgan's mom, but there is something to be said. Even with the ending, I'm glad that, it was seen that Giselle had adopted. She had a spirit of adoption for Morgan. And I was glad for that. But just that dynamic of, saying you want a fairy tale life, and that means that you're going to be a wicked stepmother. There was a part of me that thought, it doesn't always go like that. And again, that's just me. I know others can feel that way too because of going through life experiences. But again, it's just different sometimes to explain that to people. That makes sense what I just conveyed? Or did it go over people's heads?
That makes total sense. And because like obviously watching it from my point of view, it was a little bit like, because of the magic, it was like, because Gazelle was she wasn't an evil stepmother. She had nothing but love all the way through. And it was that kind of thing of she was being forced, as you said, into that stepmother trope of being evil. And yeah, it was definitely you could see like that inner turmoil between her and how she didn't want to be like that. And you definitely saw that going right the way through.
Yeah, and it was hard for me not to think about that. The whole time I kept thinking, yeah, she's under a curse, as the movie has said, but she was a stepmother before and did a good job. She's still her mom, but she's also redeemed. She's also showing what a healthy step relationship looks like. So yeah, everyone's different, but it may hit people differently. If they walk away thinking, according to Disney movie tropes, being in a step relationship means by nature you're going to be negative, but some could say that I'm maybe thinking too deeply about it.
Well, that's how people that like I love Encanto. I mean, I love all things Lin-Manuel Miranda. So, I mean, we want to talk about that. Josh knows we could talk about that all day. But like Encanto, and I'll see things that people talk about Abuelo, just like tear her down, and I was like, she made mistakes, but she made them out of fear. Like, did you not see that whole part of the movie with the two butterflies, like, or the two caterpillars? Like, did you not see, like, she made them out of protection? Like, and they make up in the end. I'm like, so, but it's like what you were saying, taking it from life experience, and like people have totally different, childhoods or even adulthoods experiences, and then they're gonna take it a different way and interpret it a different way, but so I completely understand what you're saying in that. So
I think the confusing thing even about in talking about it, this has been really rich. I love what you guys are saying. Is that it's a little bit unclear in how the curse works or whatever, and the magic of it, like how much agency that Giselle has, like, is she being taken over by another entity, or is she, but obviously she's struggling, and there's an inner turmoil, as you mentioned, Roger. So it's just one of those things where it's a little bit obviously it's all fantasy and it's not entirely explained, but it is, I like that it gave Amy Adams a challenge as an actress, because I saw one review of this film, which was fairly negative, but it said, I think Amy Adams is incapable of giving a bad performance in a film. And she just, whether it's a dramatic movie, whether it's a comedic one like this, including, or The Muppets 2011, she just excels. I mean, so to see her then take on this other role in a sense and have to play dual personalities in the same scene. And, it's not even like they're cutting away. Obviously, it's like she's being both these characters at once. It was fun to watch, and to see what she could do with that. I think that, it does fall a little bit where this movie falls into is I looked into kind of my wife and I, in watching it, we thought, this reminds me of some other plots, and we couldn't quite put our finger on it. And then I looked up kind of TV tropes and, movie tropes that are out there. And there's a whole category called Utopia Justifies the Means, which is basically the evil villain wants to create a utopia and then they'll do anything to get there. We saw it with the Age of Ultron. We see it with a lot of the Marvel films. We see it there's some different Star Wars villains that's the case. Harry Potter has a villain along those lines. Brave New World, all the way back to Aldous Huxley. So, at any rate, it's an interesting trope. I think that obviously they're trying to create this utopia in that little city of Monroeville, and they do. I think there aspects of it work, and I think part of it, by the way, is the locations. I mean, them going out to Ireland to film this, and all the little town and everything. You can see the grandness of that. I think it does elevate it beyond just a TV film or a little made for Disney Plus film, because this was probably, I would guess, maybe at least an $80 million movie, maybe even $100 million. I mean, it could have easily been released in theaters, and I think it would have done better, by the way, than Strange World that was out this last week. But yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like that? That whole plot of her having dual roles, did it work? Did it bring something new to that whole utopia idea? I'm curious what you guys think of the story and that kind of second act and where it went.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first off, I think Amy Adams is a very, very underrated actor. I know, like it could have been a year or 2 years ago, but I remember seeing something that, at least at that point, and I think it's still true. I don't think she's. I know she's been nominated, I'm pretty sure, but I don't think she's won any. I know she hasn't won an
Not
Oscar.
Oscar. Yeah, that's true.
No, yeah, she's extremely talented. Like she's like, there's so many roles, and I'm like, oh yeah, she did that, But to be able to play, like, to go back and forth as quickly as she did, like you said, like it was like the same take, like evil, and then she like flips, and then goes back, and it was amazing to see. And everything that I've read about her is that she's a very genuinely nice person, wonderful to work with, and so and I speak from personal experience on this one. I played Maleficent in the Descendants musical this past spring, and that was the first lead role I'd ever had, and the first villain, by the way, I've ever played. I've always just played the mom or the teacher, and roles that were just very easy for me to just slip into, and I just got to learn the lines, the blocking, and kind of get into character. But playing a villain, that was a challenge. It was a challenge, and I mean, our teens at the theater directed it. It was a fundraiser, and I'd be up there thinking I'm looking mean when I'm not saying lines or singing, and I had the teen director say to me, "Miss Erika, we need you to look meaner up there." And I was like, don't know. I don't know how. Like, so I would like do this. I'm like, "Is that better?" They're like, "Okay, it'll work." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to do." But to be able to, like, the way she flipped through those, like, it was it was awesome to see. I mean, I that had to have been difficult. So and also mad props to her castmates, because I would have been. I mean, good thing that was mostly everybody was off camera, because I would have been losing it laughing seeing a co-star like go back and forth doing that. I would just been like, all right, I'll be in my trailer. I can't watch this. So
I thought that was quite interesting as well, with the idea of and pretty much kind of, obviously we're filming them in Ireland. I don't know if you've ever been to like the Wicklow area in Ireland, and I mean, to be honest, some of the areas that they look like, I mean, where I live in rural England, they're not that different. So it was the kind of thing of like that's utopian going on. They're going, that's where have we gone from New York? Because it for me, it actually took me out of it, because I was just like, that's nothing like it. It was like the opposite of like, I could instantly just be like, this is way too far away from, I know it's a utopia from a like a New York point of view for Ireland, but for me, it just instantly just took me out.
well, I'm originally from upstate New York, and I was looking at when they very first got to Monroeville, and I was like, that's really green, even for upstate New York, with leaves and trees and everything. I was like, this, and I looked at the filming locations. I'm like, okay, Ireland, this makes sense. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
And also as well, you kind of had this whole thing as well of my dog's having that you could tell. And there's my one little pet peeve with it was, you could tell they filmed nearly all of this outdoors during the restrictions, because there was like hardly any internal stuff.
That's interesting. Yeah. I think it's hard to match the, what happened in Enchanted with the Central Park scene, and obviously how will you know that he loves you, etc. That song is obviously a number that kind of is one of the best live action musical numbers that's been done in film in decades. But they kind of tried to, I think, recreate that a little bit, and the environment was beautiful in Ireland. It did a tremendous job, and from an American standpoint, it certainly what did feel like a utopia. Gabriel.
Yeah, and I would add on to that what's being said. I think that's what I was thinking could have been improved in the film to make it more memorable. The first one, this was not a bad film. I don't agree with people that want to trash it. This is a horrible film and it wasn't magical. I'm not going to say that ever. But I do remember watching the first one just cracking up at several points because it was such a blatant attempt to talk about where the fairy tales really do come true, where the dreams come true in urban America, in an America that's disillusioned. When she was singing, a happy working song, when she was singing that and the rats and the roaches showed up, I died laughing. I was like, did we just go there with the animal trope? I wasn't expecting that, but then I had to stop and think, you in New York City. And I lived in DC. DC is very similar. So I had to stop and think, this was brilliant. I wasn't expecting, a princess to have the wrong kind of audience and then her having to make it the right kind of audience. I liked how in the beginning of Disenchanted, it showed her having to say goodbye to her new friends, her new animal friends. And probably thought, what would an animated film look like if we're having pigeons, roaches, and rats, singing like it wasn't in Malaysia? I don't know. I'd be curious about that. But regardless, I think that at points, it was definitely humorous at different points, but I felt that some of that, I think actually, now that I think about it, let me take something back. One other thing I did like about the humor is that they had her understand sarcasm when she became wicked. That was brilliant, but it was different because she was very cold. And it's just, I think a lot of people, I'll be honest, I think a lot of people were probably taken aback by how different of a character Amy Adams was in this movie, from her bubbly self that finally understood anger to being a very cold and calculating person who then understands sarcasm and says, oh, okay, bump it. That's a shift for a lot of people that may have an expectation for what a Disney musical looks like. And not just a Disney musical, but musicals within a certain genre. Again, it's like watching Aladdin. We all loved, I'm assuming, watching the first Aladdin. Every song from A Whole New World to, Never Have a Friend Like Me was amazing. I would dare say most of us don't remember 2 or 3 musicals from The Return of Jafar. Am I correct about that?
Not another single one.
They sang. I remember Iago sung one, Genie sung one that wasn't really good. Jasmine Aladdin re-sung another one. But even the musical tone just felt a little different. And they had less songs than Disenchanted. It just felt like y'all getting a paycheck for this musical. But it's all good. It's all good. I feel it. We got to get that movie. We got to get the money made. So I think for this one, because they were having to deal with an era shift, since it's not 2007, they had to make up for that. If this was made maybe like in 2010, 2012, that'd be different. There was a different kind of atmosphere with Disney at the time. And I remember reading somewhere what stood out is that with Disenchanted, compare what happened to Enchanted in 2007. By the time 2007 ended and people were critiquing the Disney Renaissance and the sequels more specifically, you went back to animated films like Tangled and
Princess and the Frog.
Tatiana from the Frog Prince. Or I remember I got that one. I'm so sorry, I feel bad. But you get my point. We went back to animated films and the traditional Disney trope. So I think a lot of people, they may still be in that kind of mindset now. They're like, we don't really need to see critiques about stuff anymore. Let's just have a standard fairy tale and not have too much wit or any wit at all. And that's where the negative reviews are coming from mostly. That's just
I also feel like had this had a theatrical release, it would have had a slightly bigger budget. We'd have had a little bit more. Maybe some of the scenes might have been a little bit more extended. The dragon was awful because you could just tell they were trying to save money. But I do feel like this got shifted. Imagine it got shifted to Disney Plus way much in the early stages when they were trying to work it out. I feel like if they were doing the decision now, they probably would be like, no, we'll put it out in cinemas, because they probably could have made 200-300 million on this and got the money back quite happily. Same thing with Hocus Pocus 2. And I kind of feel like these two movies might be one of those things that can, yeah, we need to kind of up this a bit, I feel.
And it's different having movies after the fact. I mean, Disney Plus has shifted a lot of stuff. When Enchanted came out, it was an in-theater experience. You had a whole bunch of people there. Even small little things, like when the scenes shifted somewhat, they would kind of fade out, right? And I was thinking, like, that's not how it was in the theaters. This definitely feels like a Hallmark film, a Hallmark watch-at-home film. And it gets you in a different kind of mode where you're like, it's just not the same as seeing it. I didn't see it in theaters, of course. I had friends that saw it in theaters. I saw it on DVD. And such thing existed. But I still thought it was pretty good with what they were able to do with it to make the point, you know.
See, I'm usually a huge critic of so many of the Disney sequels and prequels and the endless kind of repetition that we're seeing, especially the live action remakes of Disney classics. I hope that we see that trend die soon, although it doesn't appear to be that way. You know, it's this one I felt was, you know, some of the things that are not working on Disney Plus, for instance, in my mind would be like Home Alone 6 and the Cheaper by the Dozen remake that everyone kind of forgot. And, you know, like there's no reason to do that. And I felt this at least had a reason to exist. And you did get back all the four main leads, you know, with Amy Adams and Patrick Dempsey and James Marsden and Idina Menzel. You know, to me, that you know, there's a lot of things that do elevate it, and it did make it more than just a let's make a quick buck, which I know is the common narrative, and that's one that I'm certainly prone to agree with. But I think in this case, it is something special. I think it probably stands among the best Disney Plus originals, up there with Hamilton. You know, up there with, by the way, if you haven't seen Clouds, another great musical type film, Togo as well. So there's a few, you know, a few number of Disney Plus originals that have been done, and I think this certainly stands out from others. But Erika, I feel like there's a few things you've wanted to chime in and and say here.
No, I mean, as far as I don't know, like as far as the sequels things go, I mean, I don't know, like there's not many, in my opinion. Like as far as like sequels go and remakes, like I'm not a big fan of remakes. There haven't been too many that I've even enjoyed, and I'll be honest, there's not too many that I've even wanted to watch. I did enjoy, especially specifically Disney. I grew up. My grandparents had one of those huge satellite dishes that are like, I don't even know if you can. I know Dish Network makes like the smaller ones, but I don't even know if people buy the huge ones anymore for personal use. But so they would get like, you know, the 10 HBOs and the 10 Disneys and Disney West, Disney all this stuff. So I would go to their house and watch like all the old Haley Mills movies and all those, like, you know. So I grew up watching, you know, I loved Haley Mills. And so like the old Parent Trap was my thing. That was one of my favorite movies. And then when they did the Lindsay Lohan one, I was like, oh, how dare they just redo a classic. Yeah, I was like offended, you know. But I feel that way about any like thing that I don't even want to say from my childhood, but because it might have been from somebody else's childhood that I just happened to see in my childhood, you know. But I'm very much like how dare you redo Red Dawn or something, you know. I'm just like, will you just stop, you know? But also I feel that way because like I'm a reader, and how many books get published, and granted not every book is suitable to be on screen or something, but there's all these books that get published every single year that are great, that turn that into a screenplay. Stop redoing perfection. You can't do it, you know. But like, but therefore though, the Parent Trap redo, I was very pleasantly surprised. I was like, this is actually great. They didn't they gave nods to the old ones, and so many, and Disney's great about doing that. Like in this one, like the references to all these, like I said, I noticed a lot, but I had to look it up, and I was like, I missed that, you know, all these different things that they you know, put those Easter eggs in. um but like doing the Cheaper by the Dozen, I was like, do you not realize like the Steve Martin, and I love Steve Martin, I love that man, but like even those ones were remakes. I was literally just in the play version of Cheaper by the Dozen, and I didn't even realize that's it's, I mean, I knew it was a true, based on true story, but it's from the 20s. Like, that's when the family, it's from 100 years ago. And I was like, wow, we've really redone this a few times. Can we just stop, And sometimes I just feel it's like, well, it'll put some money in our bank account. Let's just check off some boxes, change some things, and I'm like, you're just ticking more people off here, by changing more and more things. Like you said, the Home Alone 6. I'm like, when I saw that, I was like it's like, what is it in Spaceballs? Rocky 5,000. It's like, that's what you feel like it is. It's like, this is a joke, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many more times can you just keep doing this? Like, can we,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind so much with them doing like remakes of like, like movies from like the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I think, they're
Yeah.
far enough have gone. But when you're doing remakes, and people like with Cheaper by the Dozen, where they didn't even realize, most people didn't even know that was a remake of a remake.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Or like
it's like,
horror
we
movies.
just had it.
Like, I understand, like, now I love Poltergeist, the original Poltergeist, but I understand why, like, hey, we've got new technology that's come out. We can make this look like a little bit more like what they originally intended it to be, a little scarier or something. I understand, but I was like, we just did this movie 10 years ago. Why are you redoing it again? And I'm like, you're really just pushing it now. Like, you're just angering us. Like, we know the 80s and the 90s, or the 80s more than anything, is apparently everybody's favorite because everything is coming back. But it's just it just drives me nuts, and I don't understand. Like, Josh, I think it was your post about this, like, or maybe it was Doug, our friend Doug's, but redoing Flight of the Navigator. I'm like, Disney. Why are you doing this? Why?
Yeah.
No, we don't need to do this.
Let me jump in here
Stop
real quick
now.
and say, sorry, let me jump in here and say something real quick before I forget.
Absolutely.
I think that something that people are very keenly aware of, if we have time, they're very keenly aware of the fact that you can only go so far with remakes. Because at some point you're going to get through the whole movie series of the Renaissance and have nothing else to do but make something new. You're going to have Beauty and the Beast in 3D, or Beauty and the Beast in virtual reality, Aladdin again. Not only live action, but whatever new technology we have. You can only go so far with these movies.
It's still got the whole of Pixar to go yet.
Remakes, but I think that a lot of the remakes are actually good. It's just that as it concerns the actual mechanisms Disney has, they have to be creative. I know there's another Little Mermaid coming out at some point soon. I'm looking forward to that. And there's been a lot of craziness that's been said, but as a person who actually loved the musical, I was an African-American child that loved Little Mermaid in 1989, I believe, because it spoke to me. But for people saying, well, Ariel's a ginger, I stopped and think, this is an educational moment, because that redheads are also black too, right? Y'all, you do know that. People don't know that. They don't realize that there were actually mermaids in African folklore and mythology. They don't realize what it's like culturally for people to be watching a movie and see an entirely different set of experiences. Because for the most part, we have to wait till Tatiana and the Princess and the Frog actually have a black princess, but black kids were enjoying the movies and the remakes up to that point. So now that it's become reversed, I think it's actually challenging people stuck in an old way of thinking to not realize, you can remake things as long as it's fresh and it speaks to what's going on today. And again, I got to throw that one out there because I see a lot of the conversations coming up. I see people say mermaids can't be dark skinned at 20,000 feet under the ocean, even though they can say that talking crabs and women that are half octopus and purple are logically able to exist. But somehow,
and steal voices and
steal drums in the water. That's possible. That's scientific. But a girl with light skin or brown skin, red hair, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some of the footage at the D23. It's amazing. I mean, I can't wait to see it because it just looks, the effects with her hair just look stunning. I can't wait to watch the whole thing after to see, and there's just like a 3-minute clip of it. It looks great.
And as a fan of musicals, I mean, goodness, the director Rob Marshall, he comes, he did Mary Poppins Returns, he did Chicago, he did Disney's Annie, so this is a talented director of musicals, Rob Marshall. And Haley Bailey, who has been cast as Ariel, she is, you go listen to her music. I mean, she is a phenomenal, voice. So we do need to, I think, close it up here. Where this is obviously, I think, coming out next summer, The Little Mermaid. But Disenchanted. That is, I think, has been I think it's in a sense an exception to the rule when it comes to sequels and some of these remakes. And I think it is worth checking out. There are unfortunately a number of negative reviews and things out there. I think you guys have given us a little bit more to chew on in terms of the themes of it, and in terms of what there is some things to appreciate about it.
Morgan likes Byron. She was in the. I like that Morgan's true love was a multiracial man. I wouldn't let that one slip. I was like,
yes,
okay.
that was awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And don't read reviews. I mean, I don't read reviews anyways, or at least if I do it, I don't let it ever affect how I'm gonna feel about the show. Like my daughter every once in a while will be like, well, this review said. I'm like, okay, I like it. So,
well, Erika, thank you for bringing your expertise to this. Gabriel as well. This has been tremendous. Roger.
Yep. Thanks everyone.
Thanks for having me.
It's been great. Remember, you can go check us out over at whatson@disneyplus.com, where you can subscribe, like, and follow and find us on all the different social medias. And on that note, guys, thank you very much. See you guys soon. Laters. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Also, a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and also on our YouTube channel memberships. And I shall see you guys in another video. Laters.